I am Malachi Hayes, 72 years old, and for the first time in my life, I truly understand the meaning of silence. My son Jordan and his wife Megan invited me to their home in Los Angeles. When I arrived, no one was home. Just as I turned to leave, their neighbor ran out, his face pale with panic. He shouted, "Run, Mr. Hayes! They aren't who you think they are. They're desperate." I just gripped my carry-on bag tighter. Desperate. They had no idea what I was capable of. That night, I didn't run. I checked into a penthouse suite and called my lawyer. The trap was set. Before I continue this story, tell me in the comments where you are watching from, and please hit like and subscribe if you believe that underestimating a quiet man is the biggest mistake anyone can make. I stood on the sidewalk in Ladera Heights, Los Angeles. The flight from Atlanta had been smooth, but the silence greeting me was unsettling. This was my first visit since my wife Serena passed away. The trip was Jordan and Megan's idea. They had been relentless calling me every few days. "Dad, you have to come visit. Get out of that big empty house in Atlanta. Come to LA. We'll take care of you." Their concern had touched me, but now, standing in front of their dark house, it felt wrong. It was a beautiful California-style home, the kind with big windows and a terracotta roof. But the porch light was off, even though dusk was settling over the city. There was no car in the driveway. I pulled out my phone and dialed Jordan, straight to voicemail. "Son, it's Dad. I'm here. At the house. Where are you?" I tried Megan. Same result. Voicemail. I walked up the pathway, the wheels of my small suitcase rattling on the pavers. That's when I saw the mail. It was jammed into the slot, overflowing and spilling onto the porch mat. Not just junk mail. Windowed envelopes. Bills. I nudged one with my foot. The red letters screamed, "Final notice." A cold feeling crept up my spine. My late wife Serena had always been the sharp one. She was brilliant. She wasn't just my partner for 48 years. She was my rock. And she had never trusted Megan. Mac. She used to tell me, her voice firm but loving as she sipped her tea. "You see the potential in everyone. I see the reality. And the reality of that girl Megan is trouble." When Jordan first introduced us to her, I saw a pretty energetic young white woman from the valley, someone I thought complemented my son's quiet nature. Serena saw an opportunist. "Look at her eyes, Mac." Serena had warned me in the privacy of our kitchen. "She's not looking at Jordan, she's looking past him. She's looking at what he represents, at what she thinks we have." I had dismissed it as a mother-in-law's overprotective nature. Jordan was our only son. We'd raised him to be a good man, maybe too soft, too eager to please. I always thought he'd find his strength. After Serena passed last year from the cancer, the grief was a heavy fog. Jordan and Megan were so supportive. Their insistence that I visit had felt like a lifeline. Now, standing in front of this dark, empty house, looking at a pile of final notices, their concern felt different. It felt calculated. I rang the doorbell again. The sound echoed inside, confirming the emptiness. I was 72 years old. I hadn't flown 5 hours across the country to be stood up. I looked at the piled-up mail again. Another red envelope. Urgent, past due. I felt the weight of Serena's warnings pressing down on me, heavy as the humid LA air. I was a fool for not listening. I was about to turn around, call a cab, and go to a hotel. I had given them their chance. "Don't bother, they ain't home. Haven't seen 'em much all day." The voice was deep and gravelly. I turned. A man about my age, maybe a little younger, was standing on the porch of the house next door. He was African-American like me, tall and lean, with watchful eyes that told me he hadn't missed a thing in this neighborhood for a very long time. He walked over, wiping his hands on an old rag. "You must be Malachi Hayes," he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded. "I am." "And you are?" "Alvin Henderson. I live here." He looked left and right down the street, a quick practice scan as if he was checking for spies. His whole demeanor screamed, "Old cop." He lowered his voice. "Look, Mr. Hayes, I don't know you, but I knew your wife." My head snapped up. "You knew Serena?" "Not personally, but she called me, about 6 months before she passed." He sighed, the sound heavy with memory. "She and my late wife Clara were old college friends from Spelman. Small world. Serena made me promise to keep an eye on this place, on your son, and on her. He pointed his chin toward the dark house. The casual neighborly vibe vanished, replaced by an urgent intensity. His eyes met mine. Listen to me, Mr. Hayes. Get back in your cab if it's still here. Go to the airport. Run. Get away from here before it's too late. These are terrible people. The words hit me, but I didn't flinch. Run, I said, my voice steady. That's my son in there. What did they do? Alvin shook his head, a look of pity on his face. Your son is a fool. God rest his soul. But that wife of his, Megan, she's pure venom. He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. You shouldn't be here. They're in deep. I mean deep. What kind of deep? I asked. Loan shark deep. Alvin said the words, hitting me harder than a physical blow. They owe money, a lot of money, to bad people. People who don't take no for an answer. People who don't care about overdue notices, they just start breaking things. Or people. I looked at the dark house, the pile of bills. It all started to make a horrible, sickening sense. The constant calls, the insistence that I visit. The "we'll take care of you." They weren't offering comfort. They were setting a trap. Alvin wasn't finished. And that's not the worst part, Mr. Hayes. The worst part is what they've been telling everyone. They've been bragging for weeks. Bragging to their friends, bragging loud enough for me to hear from my yard while I'm trying to water my roses. Bragging about what? That their rich old man from Atlanta was finally coming to town. His eyes held mine, full of a sad, hard truth. That the ATM was arriving. That all their problems were going to be solved. He looked at me with profound sympathy. They didn't invite you here for a visit, Mr. Hayes. They invited you here to be fleeced. They are desperate. And desperate people. They do desperate things. I gripped the handle of my suitcase. My knuckles turned white. Rich old man. ATM. Alvin thought he was warning a sheep about the slaughter. He didn't know he was talking to the wolf. They thought I was just a retired old man from Atlanta living off a pension. They thought I was simple. They thought I was theirs to drain. They had no idea who Malachi Hayes really was. They had no idea what Serena and I had built. And they had no idea that their desperate little plan had just collided with a reality they were not prepared for. Thank you, Mr. Henderson, I said, my voice calm. I appreciate the warning. I think I'll go to that hotel after all. He nodded, looking relieved that I was taking his advice. Good. Get out of here while you still can. I turned and walked to the curb. Desperate, I thought. You don't know the meaning of the word, but you're about to learn. I watched Mr. Henderson walk back into his house, the screen door clicking shut with a final heavy sound. I stood alone on the curb, the LA twilight fading from purple to a deep, bruised gray. I turned and looked at the house again. My house. Mr. Henderson's words echoed in my head. Trying to sell it. A bitter, cold laugh almost escaped my lips. Sell it. How could they sell something that wasn't theirs? Jordan and Megan didn't know the truth. They couldn't. They had lived in this house for 10 years believing it was a generous gift, a symbol of their upward mobility. They saw it as an asset, a piece of their portfolio. They had no idea it was actually my anchor, my test. You see, this house, this 3-bedroom, 2-bath piece of prime Ladera Heights real estate was not in Jordan's name. It wasn't even in my name, not directly. It was owned by the Ladera Heights Trust, an entity I had established over a decade ago with myself as the sole trustee. I bought this house with cash, a simple investment in a booming market. When Jordan announced he was marrying Megan and they were struggling with LA rents, I made a decision. I told them they could live in the house, not as owners, but as tenants. Tenants who paid no rent. I thought I was giving my son a foundation, a head start. I never had growing up in Atlanta. I thought that by removing the burden of a mortgage, he could focus on his career, build his savings, become the man I knew he could be. I only asked them to do 2 things, pay the utilities and maintain the property as if it were their own. Looking at the overflowing mailbox and the cracked paver on the walkway, I could see they had failed at even that simple task. My wife Serena had warned me. Oh, how she had warned me. I could still hear her voice, sharp and clear as a diamond, cutting through my optimism. We were sitting in our study in Atlanta, the signed trust documents on my desk. Mac, you are a brilliant architect, but you are a blind father, she had said, not unkindly, but with the weight of absolute certainty. You are giving that boy a castle, but you haven't taught him how to rule himself. I had argued with her. Serena, he just needs a little help, a stable home. She had shaken her head, her eyes sad. He doesn't need a stable home, Mac. He needs a backbone. And that girl Megan, she doesn't respect him. She will not build a life with him. She will build a life on top of him. You're not giving them a home. You're giving her a ladder, and she will kick him off it as soon as she's high enough. Her words were prophetic. I had ignored them, blinded by a father's hope. I wanted to believe my son was strong. I wanted to believe his wife loved him for who he was, not for what she thought he would inherit. Now, standing here, I felt the chill of that truth. Serena was right. I had made a terrible mistake. My generosity hadn't been seen as love, it had been seen as weakness. My silence hadn't been seen as humility, it had been seen as ignorance. They thought I was just a retired old man living off a modest pension. They had no idea about Hayes' architectural design. They had no idea about the buildings I'd designed that shaped the Atlanta skyline. They had no idea about the portfolios, the international properties, the accounts Serena and I had built over 48 years of disciplined, quiet work. I never wanted Jordan to be a rich kid. I wanted him to be a man. I wanted him to find his own way, to feel the pride of building something himself. So I lived simply. We lived simply. We drove practical cars. We lived in the same comfortable but not extravagant home in Atlanta for 30 years. We taught him the value of work, or so I thought. But I had given him the fruit without the labor. And now Megan was trying to sell the entire orchard. They're desperate, Henderson had said, desperate enough to try and sell a house they didn't own, desperate enough to use their rich old man as an ATM. The anger began to burn inside me. It was a cold, slow-burning anger, not the explosive kind, but the kind that builds pressure, the kind that powers engines. It wasn't just about the money, it was about the lie. It was about the profound, staggering disrespect. Not just for me, but for Serena's memory. I looked at the dark house one more time. The front door was locked, the windows were dark, but I knew where the spare key was. Serena and I had put it there ourselves years ago under the loosest stone by the back step, just in case. They were so busy planning to sell my house, they probably never even bothered to change the locks. I walked around the side of the house, my suitcase rolling silently on the grass. I found the stone. I reached under it. My fingers brushed against the cold, familiar metal of the key. I wasn't going to a hotel. I was going home. And then, just as my hand closed around the key, I heard the sound of a car engine. Headlights swept across the driveway. A late-model BMW I knew they couldn't afford pulled up to the curb with a smooth purr. The doors opened. Jordan and Megan stepped out. The show was about to begin. I retrieved the key from under the stone, my fingers tracing the cold metal. It was still there. Of course it was. People as careless and arrogant as Jordan and Megan would never think to check for something so simple. They were too busy planning grand deceptions to notice the small details. Just as I slid the key into my pocket, the headlights swept across the lawn. A low purring engine announced their arrival before the car. A sleek black BMW 7 Series glided to the curb. It was a car I knew for a fact Jordan could not afford on his salary, not even on his old salary. This was a car bought with borrowed time and someone else's money, Vinny's money. The doors opened. Jordan scrambled out. His suit rumpled, his face pale and drawn in the harsh street light. He looked like a man walking to his own execution. He saw me, then he saw Alvin Henderson disappearing back inside his own house, and he froze. He looked for all the world like a 12-year-old boy caught shoplifting. But Megan was a different animal entirely. She emerged from the passenger side like she was stepping onto a red carpet. Her dress was expensive, her hair perfect. She saw me, she saw Henderson's closing door, and her face tightened for just 1 second. Then the mask snapped into place. "Dad!" she exclaimed, rushing over her high heels, clicking aggressively on the pavement. Her smile was wide, bright, and utterly fake. "You're here. You're early. We're so sorry, we just had to run out and grab groceries." Groceries. At 7:30 at night, dressed for a cocktail party in a $100,000 car. The lie was so blatant, it was almost insulting. There were no bags in her hands. She gave me a brittle hug that felt like gripping ice. "Thank you so much for keeping him company, Mr. Henderson," she called out loudly to the closed door next door, her voice dripping with venomous sweetness. It was a clear warning, a message sent. Jordan shuffled over, avoiding my eyes. Hey, Dad. Good to see you. Sorry we weren't here. The traffic was terrible. In a grocery store? I asked, playing confused. No, the traffic to the store, Megan chimed in smoothly, already unlocking the front door. Come on in, Dad. Let's get you settled. You must be exhausted from the flight. She bustled me inside. The house was cold. It smelled stale, like closed windows and anxiety. The mail I'd seen on the porch was now hastily swept onto a side table in the entryway, a chaotic pile of debt and final notices. The expensive sofa I had helped them buy as a wedding gift had a large, dark stain on one cushion. The whole place felt neglected, a stage set for a life they couldn't maintain. Megan was already in the kitchen, making a great show of pouring me a glass of water. I am just so embarrassed about Alvin, she said, her voice high and fluttering. You simply must not listen to a word he says. He's a lonely old man. He gets confused. He makes things up. Honestly, I think he's always been a little jealous of us, of this house. Jealous, I sat down heavily on the sofa, making sure to wince a little, playing the part of the frail, tired traveler. Jealous of what? The loan sharks, the impending foreclosure, the crushing weight of their own lies. He seemed very concerned. I said, my voice intentionally weak. He said, you were in trouble. Megan laughed. It was a sharp, brittle sound that didn't reach her eyes. Trouble? Oh, heavens, no. That's just Alvin. He probably saw us talking to a business associate and his imagination ran away with him. Jordan was pacing by the window, his back to us. He was checking his phone every 5 seconds, his thumbs swiping nervously. He was sweating. He hadn't said a real word to me yet. He was a puppet, and she was pulling every string. A business associate? I asked. Megan came over and sat on the coffee table, leaning in far too close. She placed her cold hand on my arm. Dad, Mac, you are family. We trust you. And the truth is, well, we're not in trouble. She smiled a conspiratorial, shining smile. We're on the verge of something huge. I watched her. I had seen this performance before in boardrooms right before a hostile takeover. Jordan, honey, stop pacing and come tell Dad the good news, she ordered. Jordan turned, forcing a smile that looked more like a grimace. Yeah, Dad, it's a big opportunity, a real estate deal. Megan took over, her voice dropping to a low, excited whisper. It's a once-in-a-lifetime kind of deal, Dad. A guaranteed flip. But the window is closing fast and we're just a little short on the liquidity. Liquidity. A $5 word to cover $1 million lie. I looked at Jordan. An investment I thought you were doing well at the firm, son. I knew from Henderson that Megan had been fired for embezzlement, but I needed to hear their version. Oh, I am, Dad. I am, Jordan lied, his voice cracking. This is just extra, a side project. Exactly, Megan said. But we need to secure our spot. And we were hoping we could ask you for a small loan, just to bridge the gap. Here it was, the hook. The reason for the calls, the invitation, the fake smiles. The ATM was now open for withdrawals. I put on my most confused, elderly expression. I looked from her to Jordan. A loan? Oh, kids, I don't know, since Serena passed the pension, it's not what it used to be. I live a simple life, I don't have much liquid. Megan's smile tightened, just a fraction. I saw a flash of pure annoyance in her eyes. Oh, it's not much, Dad. Really, it's just, we just need $50,000. I let Jordan carry my single suitcase up the stairs. The guest room they showed me was small and a thin layer of dust covered the dresser. It was clear they hadn't expected me to stay. They had expected me to arrive, write a check, and leave. I came downstairs, my joints aching from the flight. Megan was in the kitchen, her voice bright and artificial. Can I get you some tea, Dad? You must be so tired after that long trip. I sat on the expensive sofa, the one I recognized from a catalog, the one with the dark, ugly stain on the armrest. I looked around the living room. This wasn't a home. It was a showroom for a life they couldn't afford. A massive flat-screen television the size of a small car dominated one wall. But the rug beneath it was frayed and the paint on the walls was peeling in the corners. A sleek, modern bookshelf stood empty save for a few glossy magazines and a single pretentious glass vase. While Megan rattled pans in the kitchen, pretending to be the perfect hostess, my eyes drifted back to the hallway, to that pile of mail on the console table. Red letters. Urgent. Final notice. Past due. This house was drowning in debt. and they looked at me, their rich old man, as the lifeboat. Megan returned holding a delicate teacup. It was one of Serena's. My wife had given it to them as a wedding present. Seeing it in Megan's hand felt like a violation. "Here you go," she said. "Be careful, it's hot." I thanked her, my voice quiet. Jordan hadn't moved. He was still standing by the window, his back to me, staring out into the darkness. He was a stranger. My son, the boy I had taught to ride a bike, the boy I had taken to baseball games, was gone. In his place was this nervous, hollowed-out man, a puppet waiting for his strings to be pulled. Megan sat down on the coffee table, leaning in too close. Her perfume was overpowering, expensive, and sharp. She placed her cold hand on my arm. "Dad, Mac, I am just so glad we get to have this time together. Jordan and I have missed you so much. It's been too long." I just nodded, sipping the tea. It was lukewarm. "And, well, since you're here and your family, we really wanted to run something by you. Jordan, honey, stop pacing. Come tell Dad the good news." Jordan flinched as if he'd been shocked. He turned, forcing a smile that was painful to look at. "Oh, yeah. It's a great deal, Dad. A property, downtown. We found this amazing opportunity." He was reciting a poorly memorized script. He didn't even sound like he believed it himself. Megan, seeing him fumble, sighed dramatically and took over. Her voice dropped to a low, excited whisper, the kind snake oil salesmen use. "What my brilliant husband means to say is that we have a chance to invest in a commercial property, a small stake, but the return, Mac, the return is guaranteed. Triple our money in just 6 months." "Triple?" I asked, widening my eyes, playing the part of the naive old man. "My goodness, that sounds very fast." "It is fast," she said, her eyes gleaming with a predatory light. "That's why we have to move now. The buy-in closes at the end of the week, and we're just a tiny bit short on the capital." I held my breath. I looked at Jordan. He was examining his shoes as if they held the secrets of the universe. He was spineless. "We just need $50,000, Dad." She said it quickly, brightly, as if asking for bus fare. "Just a loan, of course. We'd pay you back the second the deal closes, with interest. We'll give you 10% interest. You won't get that from your savings account." She laughed, a light, airy sound that scraped against the silence of the room. The ATM was now open for business. I set the teacup down on the table. I made sure my hand trembled. I looked down at my own worn pants, then back at her, my face a mask of weary confusion. "Oh, Megan. Jordan. $50,000. I let my voice sound frail. "My heavens. That is so much money. That's almost my entire year's pension." I looked at Jordan, a direct appeal to the son I used to know. "Son, I don't keep that kind of money just lying around. I'm retired. I live on a fixed income. Your mother, Serena, she handled all the investments, and since she passed, I've just been trying to keep the lights on in Atlanta." I let the lie hang in the air, a perfect, fragile bubble. I watched them. Jordan looked at the floor, his face pale with what looked like shame. He couldn't meet my eyes. But Megan. The mask of the loving daughter-in-law didn't just slip. It shattered and fell to the floor. Her smile evaporated. Her eyes went flat and cold like wet stones. The warmth she had been faking vanished so quickly it felt like a door slamming shut. She stood up abruptly, her movements jerky and angry. "Are you kidding me?" The words were sharp, not sweet. They were blades. I flinched, just as I was supposed to. "Kidding? No, dear. It's just 50,000. "Don't dear me," she snapped. Her voice was low and hard. She turned on Jordan. "Jordan, look at me." He looked up, terrified. She turned back to me, her arms crossed, her posture radiating pure contempt. "You're kidding. Jordan told me you were comfortable. He told me you had investments. He told me you had money saved up from your old job." "I have a little," I stammered, shrinking into the sofa. "A rainy day fund. But this isn't a rainy day, Megan. This is a risk. It sounds very risky." "A risk?" She laughed, that cold, brittle sound again. "It's a guarantee. But you wouldn't know about that, would you? Sitting in your dusty old house in Atlanta, living on your pension." She said the word pension as if it were a disease. She took a step toward me, looming over me. "Look, old man, I am not playing games here. Your son needs this. We need this. You can't just sit there on your rainy day fund and watch your only son fail, can you? After everything he's done for you. Everything he'd done for me." The absurdity of it almost made me break character. What had he done? Accept my free housing. Take my money for his wedding. What kind of father are you? She pushed, her voice rising, losing its careful control. He brought you out here. We're taking care of you, and you can't even help him with a simple loan. A loan he is entitled to. Entitled. There it was. The truth. The rot at the center of it all. Serena's voice echoed in my head as clear as if she were standing next to me. She will not build a life with him. She will build a life on top of him. My son, my weak, foolish son, hadn't just married her. He had been consumed by her. He had been hollowed out and filled with her ambition, her greed. And now they were here to pick the bones. I had to see this through. I had to know just how deep the rot went. I need to think about it, I whispered. I clutched my chest just a little as if the stress was too much. It's all so sudden. $50,000. Megan threw her hands up in the air, a full dramatic teenage tantrum. Think about it. The deal closes on Friday. We don't have time for you to think about it. This is a yes or a no. Are you going to help your son or are you going to abandon him? Abandon him. The emotional blackmail was clumsy, but it was a hammer, designed to shatter the resolve of a frail, guilty old man. But she wasn't talking to a frail old man. She was talking to the man who had built a $30 million company from red clay and dreams. She just didn't know it yet. Please, dear, I said, my voice cracking just right. Don't pressure me. I'm tired. The flight was long. I need to rest. Can we talk about this tomorrow at breakfast? Megan stared at me, her jaw tight. I could see the calculations running behind her eyes. Was it better to push harder and risk breaking me or to regroup, let me sleep on it, and attack again in the morning? She finally let out a long, frustrated hiss of air. Fine, tomorrow. We'll talk at breakfast. She turned and stalked out of the room, her heels stabbing the hardwood floor. Jordan, come help me with our groceries. Jordan looked at me one last time. His eyes were wide, desperate. They were pleading. But what was he pleading for? Forgiveness? Or for the $50,000? I realized with a sickening lurch that I truly didn't know the answer. He turned and followed his wife, a shadow disappearing into the kitchen. I was left alone in the cold, dark living room, surrounded by the wreckage of their lies. The trap was set. They thought it was for me. They had no idea they were the ones who had been caught in it for the last 10 years. I lay in that dusty guest room bed for hours, my eyes wide open, staring at the shadows on the ceiling. The house was heavy with a toxic silence. Down the hall I heard the muffled, angry whispers of my son and his wife. I couldn't make out the words, only the sharp, stabbing rhythm of her voice and the low, defeated rumbles of his. Around midnight the whispering stopped. A door closed too firmly. Silence. I waited another 30 minutes. My mind was clear, cold, and precise. The frail, confused old man they wanted to see was gone, replaced by the man Serena had married. I slipped out of the bed, my joints protesting, but my will was iron. I carried my shoes in one hand. I moved down the dark hallway, my feet silent on the carpet. I crept down the stairs, each step a calculation. The house was dark. I didn't bother with the front door. I went to the back through the kitchen. The back door lock wasn't even engaged. Careless. I crossed the damp, patchy lawn, the cold grass soaking my socks. Alvin Henderson's house was the opposite of theirs. A single dim light was on in his living room, a beacon of order. He opened the door before I even had a chance to knock, as if he had been waiting. "Get in," he whispered, pulling me quickly inside and locking the deadbolt behind us. His living room was immaculate. Books were organized on the shelves. The furniture was old but spotless. This was the home of a man who understood discipline. He handed me a glass of water. His hands were steady as rock. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said, sitting across from me. I took a long drink. My own hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was rage. "They want $50,000. They say it's for a guaranteed real estate investment." Alvin let out a short, harsh laugh that held no humor. 50,000. He shook his head, a look of profound pity on his face. 50,000 is what they hope will silence the shark for a week. That's not the investment, Mr. Hayes. That's the interest. The glass in my hand stopped halfway to my mouth. Interest? He nodded, his face grim. "I told you I hear things. Megan isn't quiet when she's screaming into her phone in the backyard thinking no one can hear. They don't owe 50,000. They owe $200,000. My blood ran cold. $200,000 to who? A man they'd just call Vinny, Alvin said. He's not a banker, Mr. Hayes. He doesn't send final notices in red envelopes. He sends messages, the kind of messages that break bones. I sat down hard on his sofa. But the investment, she said it was a sure thing. There is no investment, Alvin said flatly. There is no opportunity. There is only the hole they dug, and she's the one who was holding the shovel. What about her job? I asked, grasping for something, anything that made sense. She's in marketing, No, she's not. Henderson interrupted, his voice sharp as a blade. Not for the last 6 months. I did a little checking after Serena called me. I still have a few friends on the force, a few favors owed. Megan Hayes was fired from her marketing firm back in May. Fired for cause. He leaned forward and his next words sealed their fate. She was caught embezzling Mr. Hayes, stealing from the company expense accounts. They didn't press charges because the firm didn't want the bad press. They just fired her and buried it. She's been lying to Jordan about it ever since. Lying to him while she burns through his credit and waits for her rich old man to show up. Embezzlement, loan sharks, a $200,000 debt. My son, my weak son, wasn't just married to an opportunist. He was tied to a professional criminal. My mind, my heart, everything went back to Serena. You said my wife called you. Alvin's hard detective expression softened just for a moment. He looked at a photograph on his mantelpiece, a smiling woman with kind eyes. My wife Clara, she passed 3 years back. She and Serena went to Spelman together way back. They kept in touch. Christmas cards, the occasional long phone call. After Serena got her diagnosis, she called me. She knew she was running out of time. I listened, my throat tight. Serena, my Serena, had been planning even from her sickbed. She had never told me. She told me about Jordan. Alvin continued, his voice low and respectful. She said he was a good boy at heart, but weak. That he always attached himself to the wrong people, people he thought were strong. And then she told me about Megan. She said, Alvin, that girl is a barracuda. She's going to strip that boy bare, and then she is going to come for his father. He looked me right in the eye, and I saw the weight of the promise he had kept. She was worried. Not just for Jordan. She was worried about you, Mr. Hayes. She said, Mac is a brilliant man, but he's blind when it comes to that boy. He sees the son he wants, not the man he has. When I'm gone, they will go after him. Please, Alvin. You were a good detective. Just keep an eye out. For me. I closed my eyes. Serena. She had seen it all. She had seen this night coming years in advance. She had seen my stubborn hope, my refusal to see the truth. She had seen my blindness. So I made a promise, Alvin said quietly. I've been watching. I've been listening. And everything your wife predicted, it's happening. They're out of lies and they're out of time. And now you've walked right into the middle of it. This isn't about an investment, Mr. Hayes. This is about survival, theirs. I stood up. The old, frail, confused man who had walked into that dark house 2 hours ago was gone. The man Serena married was back. Thank you, Alvin. You've honored my wife's memory more than you know. Now I have to honor it too. I walked back to that house, the cold metal key heavy in my pocket. It was no longer a spare, just in case. It was evidence. I slipped back inside through the kitchen, silent as a shadow. I locked the door behind me and crept up the stairs. The house was quiet, filled with the stale air of deceit. I lay down in the guest room, but sleep was impossible. My mind was a whirlwind, replaying Alvin Henderson's words over and over. $200,000. Embezzlement. A loan shark named Vinny. And Serena? Serena had known. She had tried to protect me even from the grave. I came downstairs the next morning. I made sure to walk slowly, holding my back, playing the part of the frail 72-year-old man they expected me to be. Megan was in the kitchen, a stark contrast to the previous night. She was humming, dressed in bright yellow, already making a massive breakfast. The smell of blueberry pancakes filled the air. It was a performance. She was auditioning for the role of the loving, caring daughter-in-law. "Good morning, Dad," she chirped, her voice sickeningly sweet. "Did you sleep well? I thought I'd make your favorite. You always loved my pancakes, remember?" I had never had her pancakes in my life. Jordan was already at the table, hiding behind the business section of the Los Angeles Times. He mumbled a good morning without looking up. He was a coward hiding behind his wife and a newspaper. "You're very kind, Megan," I said, sitting down heavily. "But after our talk last night, I'm still very worried. That $50,000... I needed to make the call. I needed confirmation. I pressed my hand to my temple and winced. "Oh my, I feel a little dizzy. All this stress. Megan, dear, would you be a saint and fetch my heart medication? It's in my suitcase in that small blue bag by the zipper." Her face lit up. She jumped at the chance to be helpful, to prove her devotion. "Of course, Mac. You just sit right there. Don't move an inch." She sprinted up the stairs. The moment she was out of sight, my phone was in my hand. Jordan remained hidden behind his paper. I dialed the number. My lawyer in Los Angeles, Cynthia Pham. Cynthia wasn't just a lawyer. She was a surgeon. She didn't argue cases. She dissected them. She picked up on the second ring. "Mac, it's 6:05 a.m. in L.A. This had better be an emergency." Her voice was pure business. "Cynthia," I whispered, my voice urgent. "It is. I'm at the Ladera Heights house. I need you to check the trust. Now. I have reason to believe someone is trying to move against it." "Move against it? What are you—" I heard Megan's footsteps on the floor above. "I have to go," I whispered. "Just check it. Check everything. The title, any new liens, any pending sales, everything. Call me back as soon as you know." I hung up and slid the phone back into my pocket just as Megan returned holding the blue bag triumphantly. "Here you are, Dad. See all better." "Thank you, dear," I lied, fumbling with the zipper. I'm just a little overwhelmed about your offer." Breakfast was the longest hour of my life. Megan chattered relentlessly about her investment. She spun a fantasy of a commercial property, a sure thing, how this $50,000 was just a small piece of the pie and how we'd all be rich. It was a terrible, clumsy lie. I watched her marveling at the sheer audacity. I watched Jordan Hyde shoveling pancakes into his mouth, his eyes empty. I spent the next 4 hours as a prisoner in plain sight. I said I needed to rest after the long flight. I went to the guest room and locked the door. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my silent phone. Every minute that passed felt like a year. What was happening? Had they already succeeded? At 10:30 a.m., the phone vibrated, nearly jumping off the nightstand. I grabbed it. Cynthia. I stepped into the small adjoining bathroom and turned on the fan for cover. "Cynthia." "Mac, you were right." Her voice was no longer just business. It was cold. It was angry. "This is not good. They are in active commission of a felony." I gripped the phone, my knuckles white. "What did you find?" "It's not what I found, Mac. It's what the title company found. They called my office an hour ago because my name is on the trust. Someone is trying to fast-track a sale of the house." My heart hammered against my ribs. "A sale?" "Yes," Cynthia said, her voice sharp as glass. "They are not trying to borrow $50,000 from you, Mac. They are trying to steal $2.5 million from you. They are in escrow. They accepted an all-cash offer 2 weeks ago and are scheduled to close in 3 days. I had to lean against the wall. The room was spinning. "How?" "They forged your signature," Cynthia said, answering my unspoken question. "They forged it on a fake power of attorney document claiming you were medically incapacitated in Atlanta and that Jordan had full rights to liquidate your assets in California. The notary stamp is fake. The medical assessment it refers to doesn't exist. It's sloppy, desperate work, Mac, but they were counting on no one checking until the money was gone." The $50,000 loan was a smokescreen, a fast cash grab while the real prize was being processed. Or if I refused, it was meant to be the trigger. It was meant to make me angry, to create a fight to build their case that I was becoming irrational and difficult. Cynthia was still talking, her voice a precise, angry monotone. "They were going to sell your house, pay off their loan shark, and run with the remaining $2 million. They were never going to see you again, Mac. They were going to clean you out and disappear." I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. I saw my tired 72-year-old face. I saw the face of a fool who had let his hope for his son blind him to the truth. I saw the face of the man Serena had tried to warn. They weren't just desperate. They were criminals. They weren't just my family. They were the enemy. "Cynthia," I said. My voice had changed. The weakness was gone. The confusion was gone. It was cold. "Stop the sale immediately. Contact the district attorney's office." Tell them we have active ongoing fraud. Done, she said. But, I continued, don't let them know we've stopped it. Not yet. I'm not finished with them. There was a pause on the line. What are you planning, Mac? This is a criminal matter. It is, I said. And it's also a personal one. They just tried to steal my house and my name. They tried to erase me. Now I'm going to give them exactly what they want, just not in the way they expect. I hung up the phone with Cynthia, the bathroom fan whirring loudly, masking the sound of my own heart hammering in my chest. Forged. Liquidate. Desperate. The words echoed in the small tiled room. They weren't just incompetent, they were criminals. They weren't just greedy, they were trying to erase me. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, the face of a 72-year-old man tired with the lines of grief for his wife still etched around his eyes. This was the face they saw. They saw a frail, confused, simple old man. They saw a victim. They had no idea what a man who had built an architectural empire from the red clay of Atlanta was capable of. They had forgotten who I was. I turned off the fan. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I unlocked the bathroom door and walked out of the guest room. I didn't limp. I didn't clutch my back. I walked down the stairs with a solid, measured tread, the sound of my shoes on the hardwood floor deliberate. They were in the living room exactly as I knew they would be. Jordan was staring at his phone, his face pale. Megan was pacing in front of the unlit fireplace, her entire body vibrating with nervous energy. They were waiting for me to come down for breakfast, waiting for their next chance to attack the old man for the $50,000. They heard me on the stairs. Megan stopped pacing. Jordan looked up, startled. "Dad," Megan said, forcing that bright, brittle smile again. "You're up. Are you feeling better? I was just about to make those blueberry—" "We're done talking about pancakes, Megan." My voice was quiet. It wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a surgeon's scalpel. It was the voice I used in boardrooms when a multi-million-dollar deal was falling apart. It was a voice Jordan had never ever heard me use. He flinched physically. Megan's smile faltered, her eyes narrowing. "What did you say?" I said. I repeated, stopping at the bottom step. "We're done." "Dad." Jordan stood up, his phone slipping from his hand. "What's wrong? You look—" "I just got off the phone with my lawyer," I said, my gaze locked on Megan. I watched the blood drain from her face. Jordan looked like he was going to be sick. "Your lawyer," Megan stammered. She was trying to regain control. "Why did you decide about the $50,000? Because if you need to wire it, I have the account information right here." "No," I said. "We weren't discussing your $50,000 lie. We were discussing this." I gestured around the room. "We were discussing my house, the one you are actively trying to sell behind my back." The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavy and sharp like a block of falling glass. Jordan made a small choking sound and sank back into his chair, his head in his hands. But Megan didn't crumble. She ignited. The mask of the loving daughter-in-law didn't just fall, she ripped it off and threw it to the ground. Her face, moments before painted with fake concern, contorted into a mask of pure reptilian rage. "Your house," she hissed. The word was venom. "Your house. We have lived in this dump for 10 years. We fixed it up. We made it livable. We put our lives into this place while you did nothing. You've lived here for free, Megan," I stated calmly, which only made her angrier. "You haven't paid a dime in rent. You were asked to maintain the property, and from what I see, you failed at that too." "How dare you?" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "How dare you come in here and judge us? Jordan is your son. This house belongs to him by right. It belongs to us. You are a selfish, senile old fool." "It belongs," I said, my voice dangerously quiet, "to the Ladera Heights Trust, of which I am the sole trustee. You are and have always been tenants, and your lease is about to be terminated." "Tenants?" she screamed. The words seemed to break her. "You... tenants!" She whirled on Jordan, who was cowering in his chair. "Jordan, are you going to let him talk to me like that? Are you going to let him do this to us? Say something? Do something?" Jordan was frozen, his hands shaking, unable to look at either of us. "Megan, please, let's just calm down. We can talk about this." "Calm down," she shrieked, advancing on him. "He's trying to ruin us. He's trying to destroy us. After everything we've done. After we've been waiting all this time." She turned back to me, her eyes wild, her face red. "You owe us this. You owe us." She lunged at me. It wasn't a small push, it was a full-bodied shove. Her hands slamming into my chest. I saw it coming. I had counted on it. I had spent the last 2 hours while they slept planning this very moment. I saw the small rolled edge of the oriental rug she had kicked aside in her rage. It was positioned perfectly. I didn't resist the push. I let my body go with it. I combined her momentum with my own planned, deliberate stumble. My foot caught the edge of the rug perfectly. Time slowed down. I twisted as I fell, protecting my head, but aiming my shoulder just as I had rehearsed in my mind. I aimed for the sharp, heavy oak corner of the coffee table. The fall was real. The impact was real. A sickening, wet crack echoed in the silent room as my shoulder connected with the wood. The pain was immediate, white-hot, and blinding. It was far more real than I had anticipated. I collapsed onto the floor. I let out a very real, very agonizing groan. "Ugh, my shoulder!" I cried out, my voice choked with genuine pain. I clutched my arm, which already felt numb and wrong. "My shoulder. You broke it." The scene froze. Megan was standing over me, her hands still out, her face a mask of total shock and horror. She hadn't expected me to fall. She certainly hadn't expected a sound like that. Jordan finally snapped out of his trance. "Dad. Oh my God, Dad." "He yelled, scrambling to my side, his face slick with panic. "You pushed me," I gasped, looking at Megan, letting the tears of pain stream down my face. "You attacked me." Megan started to back away, her hands flying to her mouth. "I didn't." He tripped. He just tripped. I didn't touch him. "Jordan, tell him I didn't touch him." But Jordan wasn't listening. He was fumbling for his phone, his fingers shaking so badly he could barely unlock it. "Dad, don't move. I'm calling 911. I'm calling an ambulance." I raised my good hand and grabbed his arm. "No," I whispered, my voice strained. "No. Ambulance. Call the police." Jordan stopped dialing. His eyes were wide. "The police. Dad, it was an accident. She didn't mean—" "She pushed me, Jordan," I said, locking eyes with my son. The pain gave my voice a terrible clarity. "Your wife. She assaulted me. I want her arrested." The game had just changed. The pieces were all in motion. And now I had exactly what I needed: a documented assault, a 911 call, and a guaranteed trip to the hospital where I would be safe from them and free to bring in my lawyer, my allies, and the full weight of the truth. The bright, sterile lights of the emergency room bay at Cedars-Sinai were blinding, humming a high-pitched, indifferent note above me. I lay on the gurney, the thin sheet scratching my skin. The pain in my shoulder was a deep, throbbing fire, a real and agonizing counterpoint to the calculated performance I was about to give. A young doctor, his face kind but tired, finished tightening the sling. "Well, Mr. Hayes, you've definitely dislocated your shoulder. A clean dislocation, no fracture, which is the good news. The bad news is it's going to be extremely painful for a few weeks." "Oh, thank you, doctor. Thank you so much." Megan was hovering her performance in full swing. Her hands were clasped at her chest, her eyes wide with manufactured terror. "We were just so worried. He just fell. It was so fast." Jordan was on the other side of the gurney, his face the color of old ash. He looked sick. "Dad, can you hear me? It's Jordan. We're right here, Dad." I kept my eyes closed, letting out a low groan that was only half fake. The throb in my shoulder was a useful grounding reality. "He seems confused," Megan whispered to the doctor, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "He's been like this, a little frail, you know, ever since his wife passed. He forgets things. He gets agitated." She was laying the foundation, planting the seeds of my incompetence. "Megan, please," Jordan muttered, running a shaky hand through his hair. "Not now. We're just concerned," she insisted, her voice breaking with false emotion. The curtain around our bay was suddenly sharply pulled back. "Mr. Hayes, Malachi Hayes." 2 uniformed LAPD officers stood there. One was older, with a face that had seen too much, his notepad already out. The younger one stood just behind him, his hand near his belt, observing. I saw Megan's face flash with pure, unadulterated panic. Jordan looked like he might faint. This was not part of their plan. "Officer," Megan said, recovering instantly, stepping between me and the police. "What is this? Is something wrong?" The older officer, Diaz, ignored her. He looked straight at me on the gurney. "Sir, we received a 911 call reporting a possible domestic disturbance at your son's residence. The caller specified potential elder abuse." Alvin Henderson, that magnificent, glorious man, he hadn't just called the police. He had used the magic words, the legal, fire-starting, irreversible words. Elder abuse. Megan let out a sound, a high-pitched laugh that was almost a scream. "Elder abuse. My goodness, no, officer, you don't understand. This is my father-in-law. He had an accidental fall. We've been telling the doctor. He's confused. He tripped on a rug." The caller, a Mr. Alvin Henderson, stated he heard a violent argument. Officer Diaz continued, his voice a flat monotone, reading from his notes. He said he heard a female voice screaming, quote, "You owe us," and "selfish old fool," followed by a loud crash and a man crying out in pain. Megan's face went white, then red. "Mr. Henderson, that old man is senile. He's a neighborhood pest. He's always making up stories. He's confused. We were just having a loud discussion about dinner. He must have misunderstood." "We'll need to speak to Mr. Hayes," the officer said, finally looking at Megan. "Alone. But he's in pain. He's on medication," Megan protested. The doctor, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. "He's only had a local anesthetic for the relocation. He is perfectly lucid." Lucid. The word hung in the air, a direct contradiction to Megan's narrative. The officer nodded at the doctor, then looked at Megan. "Ma'am, please wait outside the curtain." "But I'm his family, ma'am, now." The officer's voice had steel in it. Megan's eyes darted between me, Jordan, and the officer. She was trapped. She shot me a look of pure, murderous hatred before grabbing Jordan's arm. "Fine. Come on, Jordan, we'll wait outside. Dad, just tell them it was an accident like we discussed." She was still trying to give me the script. She dragged Jordan out and the curtain swished shut. It was just me and the two officers. Officer Diaz pulled a small stool over and sat next to my gurney. His partner stood by the opening. "Mr. Hayes," Diaz said, his voice much softer now. "Take your time, we're not in a hurry. Can you tell us in your own words what happened today? This was it. The entire plan balanced on this moment." I slowly, painfully opened my eyes. I winced as a jolt of real pain shot through my shoulder. I let the pain show on my face. I let the tears that welled up, tears of rage, of betrayal, of agony, roll down my temples into my hair. She... I licked my dry lips. I looked at the officer, trying to project total, heartbreaking vulnerability. "Take your time, sir. They wanted money," I whispered, my voice cracking. "A lot of money. $50,000. I told them I didn't have it. That I'm just on a pension, that Serena, my wife, she's gone, and..." I let my voice break. The officer nodded, writing. "And what happened then, Mr. Hayes? Megan, she got so angry." I looked at the officer, my eyes pleading. She called me names. She said I was a selfish old man. She said I owed them, that Jordan was entitled." I took a shaky breath. I just told her I couldn't. I told her I had to think about it, and she just snapped. "What did she do, Mr. Hayes?" I closed my eyes as if reliving the horror. "She pushed me. She screamed, 'You owe us,' and she shoved me hard. I'm 72 years old. I couldn't keep my balance. I fell. I hit the coffee table. I heard it crack." I started to shake. It wasn't hard to fake. The memory of the impact was still fresh. Officer Diaz stopped writing. He looked at his partner. His partner looked back. Suddenly the curtain was ripped open. Megan stood there, her face a mask of fury. She had clearly been listening from the other side. "He's lying." Her voice was a shriek that echoed through the ER bay, making a nearby nurse jump. "He's lying. He fell. He's confused. He tripped on the rug." Officer Diaz stood up slowly, calmly placing himself between Megan and my gurney. "Ma'am, I asked you to wait outside." "You can't believe him," she screamed, pointing a trembling finger at me. He's senile, he's paranoid, he's been like this ever since his wife died. He's making it all up. Jordan, tell them. Tell them he's been confused. Jordan was standing behind her, his face completely bloodless. He looked like a ghost. "Ma'am, you need to calm down," Officer Diaz said, his hand moving toward his belt. "I will not calm down," Megan shrieked. "You are being manipulated by a senile old man. He's the one who's abusive. That's enough," Officer Diaz said. His voice was now pure ice. "You are interfering with a police investigation. Either you step outside or I will arrest you for obstruction." The threat finally landed. Megan stared at him, breathing heavily, her chest heaving. She looked at me on the gurney, and the hatred in her eyes was so pure, so potent, it was almost stunning. She turned, grabbing Jordan by the arm again. "This is ridiculous. We're getting a lawyer." She stormed out, dragging her puppet son behind her. Officer Diaz watched her go. He turned back to me, his expression grim. "Mr. Hayes," he said, "I think we need to have a serious talk about your living situation, and I think we need to get a protection order in place, right now." Officer Diaz and his partner left the bay. The younger officer pulled the blue curtain shut, but it felt less like a shield and more like the curtain on a stage marking the end of Act 1. I lay on the gurney, the throbbing in my shoulder a dull, angry fire. The doctor had been precise. A clean dislocation. He had reset it, a moment of sharp, blinding agony, and now I was immobilized in a sling, the victim of my own plan. I had done it. I had the police report. I had the official documented event of an assault. I had a temporary restraining order being processed against Megan, which would legally remove her from my house. My house. I almost smiled. The pain was a small price to pay for control. The emergency room was a symphony of chaos outside my curtain. Beeps, rushed footsteps, a woman crying softly somewhere. I was in the eye of the storm, perfectly calm. I had my phone, which I had palmed during the fall, tucked safely under the thin hospital pillow. Cynthia was moving. The DA's office was being alerted. The fraudulent sale of my house was frozen. I was safe. They were trapped. Then the curtain ripped open. It wasn't a nurse. It wasn't the doctor. It was Jordan. His face was a mask of pure primal terror. His skin was gray, his eyes wide and bloodshot. He looked like he hadn't breathed in an hour. "Jordan," I started to say, my voice still weak. "The police. They said you couldn't." "He made us," Jordan stammered. He was shaking, his hands held up as if to ward off a blow. Megan was right behind him, her mask of rage gone replaced by the same raw panic as her husband. She stumbled into the small bay, her expensive dress now rumpled. And then a third man entered. He ducked slightly to clear the curtain rod. He was not what I expected. He wasn't a large, scarred thug. He was immaculate. He wore a dark gray Italian suit that probably cost more than Jordan's car. His shoes were polished to a mirror shine, a silver tie, a crisp white shirt. He looked like he should be on the cover of Forbes. But his eyes were ancient calm and held an absolute, terrifying stillness. "Mr. Malachi Hayes?" he asked. His voice was smooth, cultured, with just a hint of a New York accent. I didn't answer. I just watched him. He smiled, a thin, polite gesture that didn't touch his eyes. "I'm Vinny, a business partner of your son's." He glanced at Jordan and Megan, who were pressed against the wall by the sink as if trying to merge with the drywall. They were kind enough to escort me back here. They were insistent. "The police," I whispered, playing my part. "They said a restraining order." "Ah, yes, the police," Vinny said, as if discussing a minor inconvenience like the weather. "A clumsy solution to a clumsy problem." He pulled the small visitor's stool over the one Officer Diaz had just used and sat down. He crossed his legs perfectly at ease. "That looks painful," he said, gesturing to my sling with his chin. "A domestic dispute, I'm told, messy." He leaned forward, placing his manicured hands on his knees. "Look, Mr. Hayes, I hate hospitals. They smell like antiseptic and failure. Let's be quick." He turned his gaze to Jordan. Jordan visibly flinched. "Jordan," Vinny said softly, "you've been avoiding my calls. I don't like being avoided. It makes me feel unappreciated." "Vinny, I swear I was going to call you today," Jordan whispered, his voice cracking. "We just hit a snag, but we have the money. We have it." "You had it." Vinny corrected him, still in that calm conversational tone. Or more accurately, you thought you had it. He looked at Megan. Her breathing was fast and shallow. You, my dear, you have been very, very sloppy. You told me the house sale was a sure thing. You said it was closing on Friday. My associate did some checking this morning. The sale is frozen. There is a fraud investigation. The title is in dispute. Megan and Jordan just stared stunned into silence. He knew. Of course he knew. A man like this would never advance $200,000 without collateral, or in this case, without the promise of collateral. Vinny turned his full, undivided, terrifying attention back to me. So this is our new reality, Mr. Hayes. I don't understand. I lied, my voice trembling. What is this about? What money? Vinny smiled. Please, let's not. Your son and daughter-in-law here borrowed $200,000 from me. They signed a contract. They secured the loan against you. Me. Yes, you. The rich old man from Atlanta. The ATM, as your charming daughter-in-law apparently calls you. My feigned confusion didn't have to be faked. How did he know that he must have had them followed? Or bugged? This man was not a simple thug. He was a professional. They promised me, Vinny continued, that when you arrived in Los Angeles you would settle the account. They promised me you would sign the papers. They promised me you would pay. Well, Mr. Hayes, you are here. He let the words hang in the air, heavy and toxic. Megan finally found her voice. It's just a misunderstanding. We will get you the money. The house. It's just a legal snag. We'll fix it. Vinny looked at her. You will fix nothing. You are incompetent. And you lied to me. I despise liars. He stood up, smoothing the front of his perfect suit. He looked back at me on the gurney. So here is the new arrangement. The children's table is closed. I am now talking to the adults. Your son's debt, Mr. Hayes, is now your debt. He made it your debt when he used your good name as collateral, and I am not a patient man. I told them, I whispered the picture of a terrified old man. I'm on a pension. I don't have $200,000. Vinny's smile never wavered, but his eyes went completely dead. That is unfortunate, because I don't believe you. And even if I did, I don't care. I was told they were selling the house. It seems you are the actual owner. So the original plan stands just with a new signatory. He took a step closer to the gurney. You have 48 hours. I held my breath. 48 hours? Or what? Vinny smiled. He reached out and gently, almost tenderly, patted my good arm. Or what? He repeated softly. Let's just say, this hospital, these excellent doctors, Officer Diaz, none of them will be able to help you. He leaned in his voice, a chilling whisper that only I could hear. A dislocated shoulder will feel like a fond memory. I will not be as clumsy as your daughter-in-law. I will finish the job. Do you understand me? I couldn't speak. I just stared into his lifeless eyes. I understood perfectly. This man was not planning to break my bones. He was planning to end my life. He straightened up his public persona back in place. I'll be in touch. He nodded politely to the room at large and walked out, his footsteps silent on the linoleum floor. He left Jordan and Megan in the room, frozen in a new kind of hell. They were no longer in charge. They were no longer the predators. They were just trapped between the police, a loan shark, and me. A long, terrible silence filled the bay. Jordan was the first to break. He stumbled forward and fell to his knees by my gurney, burying his face in the thin hospital sheet. Dad, he sobbed, his voice muffled. Dad, please, you have to help us. He's going to kill us. Please, Dad, you have to pay him. Megan, however, was already regrouping. I saw the terror in her eyes being replaced by a new, desperate calculation. She looked at Jordan sobbing on the floor, and then she looked at me. Her expression was hard. He's right, Mac, she said, her voice low and shaking but regaining its steel. This is a mess, but you heard him. He thinks you have the money. You're the only one who can fix this. You have to pay him. The police wanted to arrest her. The loan shark wanted to kill her. And her only solution was to demand that I pay her way out. The sheer magnificent audacity of it was almost beautiful. This was the moment to set the final trap. Vinny left the room. The silence he left behind was thick and suffocating, heavier than any sound. Jordan was a crumpled heap on the floor, his face buried in the thin hospital sheet of my gurney, his shoulders shaking with silent, pathetic sobs. "Dad, please, he's going to kill us. Please, you have to help us." Megan was pressed against the far wall as if trying to physically push herself through it. Her face was chalk white, her eyes wide with a terror that was for the first time completely genuine. She was breathing in short, shallow gasps. She looked at her sobbing husband on the floor, then at me. Her mind was racing, her calculations frantic. "Get up, Jordan," she hissed, her voice a harsh whisper. "Crying isn't going to fix this." She stumbled forward, grabbing the footrail of my bed. "Mac, you heard him. 48 hours. You have to pay him. You have to. He's not bluffing. You have to fix this." Her audacity was breathtaking. Her assault on me was forgotten. The restraining order was an inconvenience. All that mattered was that the loan shark was at the door, and she expected me to be the one to pay him off. This was the moment, the pivot, the instant the trap had to be set. I let my head fall back onto the pillow. I let out a long, shaky breath. I let the real pain in my shoulder and the very real adrenaline in my veins make my voice tremble. Who was that?" I whispered, my voice thick with feigned terror. "Jordan, what have you done?" "He's a bad man, Dad," Jordan cried from the floor. "It was just a small loan. It just got out of control. Megan said she had a plan. I didn't know." "Shut up, Jordan." Megan snapped, her eyes darting toward the curtain, terrified Vinny might still be listening. She turned back to me, her voice dropping desperate. "It doesn't matter. None of that matters now. What matters is he wants $200,000. Money. Money you have. You're the only one who can fix this." I raised my good hand, my fingers shaking. "Stop." My voice was a broken whisper. "Please, just stop talking. Both of you." They froze. The only sound was Jordan's hitched breathing. I squeezed my eyes shut. I let the real tears in my eyes, tears of pure cold rage, spill over. But they didn't see rage. They saw fear. They saw a broken old man. "Okay," I whispered. The word was so quiet, Megan leaned in closer. "What did you say when you—" I said, "Okay." I said a little louder. I opened my eyes and looked at them. I let them see the defeat. I let them see the terror. "You win. You all win. I can't fight him." I looked at my bandaged arm, at the IV tube in my hand. "I'm 72 years old. I'm tired. I just wanted a quiet visit. I just wanted to see my son. And now, that man, he wasn't lying, was he? He meant it." Jordan scrambled to his knees. "Dad, you'll pay him. You'll help us." Hope dawned on his tear-streaked, pathetic face. Megan's eyes narrowed. She wasn't convinced. She was a predator, and predators are always suspicious of prey that gives up too easily. "Just like that," she said, her voice sharp. "You're just going to pay him. After all this, what choice do I have?" I snapped, letting a flash of panicked anger show. "Did you see his eyes? Did you hear him? He'll kill me. He'll kill us all. I don't want to die in a hospital in Los Angeles over your debts." The performance was working. My fear of Vinny was the key. It was the only thing that would make my surrender believable. "But your pension," Megan stammered, still testing. "You said you didn't have $50,000. "I lied." I shouted, the force of it sending a jolt of white-hot pain through my shoulder. I cried out, clutching the sling. I lied. Of course I lied. I have money from Serena, from the company. I have savings. I didn't want you to know. I didn't want anyone to know." I let my head fall back, exhausted. I was saving it. For my retirement. For emergencies. And now he knows. Vinny. He knows I have it. He said he'd finish the job. That was it. That was the phrase that sealed it. The suspicion in Megan's eyes evaporated, replaced by a dazzling, triumphant, greedy gleam. She had been right all along. The ATM was loaded. The old man was rich. She had won. "Oh, Dad," she cooed, her voice instantly shifting back to that sickening sweet syrup. She rushed to my side. "You are going to help us. Oh, thank you, Mac. I knew you would. I knew you loved Jordan too much to—" She reached out to hug me. "Don't!" I yelled, recoiling, pushing away with my good arm. "Don't you touch me!" She pulled back, her face a mask of wounded innocence. "I was just thanking you. And the house," Jordan said, his voice shaky but gaining strength. He was already moving on to the next prize. "Vinny said he'd take the house." "He can't take the house if I pay him," I growled. "But I'm done with it. I'm done with Los Angeles. I'm done with this." I waved my good hand at both of them. "You can have the house too." If I thought they were shocked before, it was nothing compared to this. They stared, mouths open. "What?" Jordan whispered. "Have it," I said, my voice heavy with fake exhaustion and disgust. "Sell it. Live in it. I don't care anymore. I want to go home to Atlanta. I want to be left alone. I want this to be over. You take the house. You pay your own bills from now on. You deal with your own lives. Just get Vinny out of mine." Megan's mind was racing. I could practically hear the click, click, click of her thoughts. The debt paid and they get the house. It was the jackpot. It was total victory. "Okay," she said, trying to sound calm, but her voice was vibrating with excitement. "Okay, Mac. So, how do we do this? Do you write us a check? A wire transfer?" I let out a harsh, bitter laugh. "A check. To you after you lied to me for 6 months, after you tried to sell my house behind my back, after you assaulted me." Their faces fell. The jackpot was just out of reach. "No," I said, my voice flat. "I'm not a complete fool. I'm not giving you one single dime." "But Dad," Jordan pleaded. "You said—" I interrupted him, my voice like steel. "I will pay Vinny. Directly. I am not giving you $200,000 so you can just run off with it and leave me here to deal with him." This I knew would make perfect sense to them. It fit my new character, the terrified old man, cornered but not stupid. "Okay," Megan agreed instantly. Too quickly. "That's fine. We'll give him your number. You can wire it to his account. We can—" "No," I said, my voice firm. "I'm not doing this on the phone. I'm not doing this with wire transfers. I am not doing this in a dark alley. I am a 72-year-old man who was just assaulted. This will be done my way, the right way, or it won't be done at all." "What way is that, Dad?" Jordan asked, desperate now. "We will do this in a safe place. We will do this tomorrow morning. We will go to my lawyer's office." Megan's face soured. "Your lawyer? Why, that will just complicate things. Let's just go to the bank." "Because I'm not just paying him, Megan," I said, staring her down. "I am signing over the house to you, and I am signing a document that says I will not press charges against you for this." I pointed to my sling. "And in return, I want Vinny to sign a document in front of witnesses saying this debt is paid in full. I want this over. All of it. Legally, cleanly, no loose ends." She processed this. It was a masterstroke, and she knew it. A single clean meeting. She gets the money for her loan shark. She gets the house. And she gets total amnesty for her assault. It was the perfect deal. "Okay," she said, her smile returning. "Your lawyer? Fine." "My lawyer," I confirmed. "Her name is Cynthia Pham. Her office is in Century City. We will be there at 10 a.m. sharp." "And Vinny?" Jordan asked, his voice trembling. "You call him," I commanded. "You tell him to be there. Tell him Malachi Hayes wants to settle the account in person in his lawyer's office where there are witnesses. Tell him I will have a certified check for $200,000. Megan was already pulling out her phone, a hungry, triumphant smile spreading across her face. "He'll be there," she said. "Don't you worry, Dad. He will definitely be there." "Good," I said, letting my eyes flutter close, sinking back into the pillow. "Good. Now, please leave. I need to rest. I have a very long, very expensive day tomorrow." They practically floated out of the bay, their footsteps light. They were walking on air. They thought they had won. They thought the old man had finally broken. They thought they were going to get everything they ever dreamed of. They had absolutely no idea that they were walking with smiles on their faces right into the jaws of the trap. They were about to meet the real Malachi Hayes. I lay in the semi-darkness of the hospital bay, the curtain drawn, creating a small, quiet world of sterile white and beeping machinery. The sounds of Jordan and Megan's victory, their excited, hushed whispers as they left, faded down the corridor. They thought they had won. They thought the old man was broken, cornered, and terrified into submission. They thought that in the morning they would walk into a lawyer's office and receive their jackpot $200,000 in cash and a multi-million-dollar house free and clear. I lay still for a full minute, letting the throbbing in my dislocated shoulder radiate. It was a useful pain. It kept me focused. It reminded me what was real. I reached over with my good hand and pressed the call button for the nurse. A moment later, a kind woman in blue scrubs pulled back the curtain. "Mr. Hayes, are you in pain? Can I get you something?" I gave her my best, weakest smile. "Thank you, dear. I am just so rattled. Those people, my son, his wife, it was just such a shock." I let my voice tremble just enough. Could I please have my phone? It's in the bag with my belongings. I need to call my lawyer. I'm afraid I need to get my affairs in order." The nurse's face softened with pity. "Of course, Mr. Hayes. Right away. You just rest." She retrieved my phone, plugged it in for me, and handed it over. "You just press this button if you need anything else. Anything at all." "Thank you," I whispered. "You're very kind." She smiled sadly and pulled the curtain shut. The moment it closed, the frail old man vanished. I unlocked the phone, my fingers flying over the screen. I went to my encrypted contacts and dialed Cynthia Pham's private cell. She picked up on the first ring, her voice sharp and all business even at this late hour. "Pham. Cynthia, it's Mac. The bait is in the water." I heard the quick click-clack of her keyboard. "Mac, I got the alert from Officer Diaz regarding the restraining order. Your shoulder. Was that part of the plan, or are you just getting reckless in your old age?" "A necessary improvisation," I said, shifting against the pillow and wincing as a real jolt of pain shot up my neck. "It worked. They're terrified, but more importantly, they're greedy. They think I'm broken. They think I'm giving them everything." "They're coming to the office," she stated. It wasn't a question. 10 a.m. sharp, I confirmed. Megan Jordan and the loan shark. His name is Vinny. They think I'm going to pay him the $200,000 sign over the Ladera Heights house to them and sign a waiver saying I won't press charges for the assault. I heard a sound on the other end of the line. It was a small, dry laugh, a rare sound from Cynthia. "Oh, Mac, you truly are Serena's husband. She would have loved this, the sheer magnificent theater of it all." "Is the conference room ready?" I asked, ignoring the compliment. "It's ready," she confirmed, her voice all business again. "The large one. The one with the 20-foot mahogany table, the one that makes people feel small." "Good. And the guests?" "The special guests have received their invitations," Cynthia said. "The appetizer will be 2 agents from the IRS Criminal Investigation Division for Mr. Vinny. The main course will be the 2 LAPD detectives you met tonight who are very eager to hear about Megan's accidental push. And for dessert, well, I took the liberty of inviting the lead investigator from the DA's white-collar crime unit, the one who specializes in real estate fraud." "It's a full party," I said. "It's a reckoning, Mac. Are you sure you're ready for this?" "I'll be there at 10, I said. "Send a private car for me at 9. I'm going to discharge myself against medical advice in the morning. I'll make a scene. It'll add to the performance. They need to see me as a man with no options left." "Be careful, Mac. These are not just foolish kids anymore. They're dangerous." "Cynthia," I said, looking at my reflection in the dark blank screen of the hospital TV. "They are not dangerous. They are just loud. They think they're sharks, but they're just minnows in a very, very big pond, and they have no idea who they're trying to bite." I hung up the phone. I lay back against the stiff hospital pillow. They saw a retired old man. They saw a widower softened by grief. They saw a simpleton from Atlanta, a man who lived modestly, who drove a 10-year-old car, who was, in Megan's words, a senile old fool, living on a miserable pension. Jordan had lived his entire life believing that. It was the greatest gift I ever gave him, and it was the biggest, most necessary lie I ever told. My name is Malachi Hayes. I am not just a retired man. I am the founder, the retired chief executive officer, and the majority shareholder of Hayes Architectural Design, the firm that redesigned the Atlanta skyline in the 1990s. The miserable pension they were fighting over. It is a diversified global portfolio managed by a team in Switzerland. My net worth is north of $30 million. The little house in Atlanta that Megan had sneered at once during a visit. It's a 7,000 square foot custom-built home I designed myself overlooking the Chattahoochee River. The investments Jordan so vaguely mentioned to his wife are commercial properties in London, Tokyo, and Dubai. Serena and I built an empire. We built it brick by brick quietly with discipline and silence. We never flashed our wealth. We lived in the same comfortable but not extravagant home for 30 years. We did this because we had seen what unearned money does to people. We had seen it destroy our friends' children. We wanted Jordan to be different. We wanted him to find his own strength to build his own life, to feel the pride of his own accomplishments. So I let him think I was just dad, just an architect, just a simple, comfortable man. I paid for his education. I gave him the Ladera Heights house as a foundation, a rent-free start that most people would kill for. And I waited. I waited for him to become something. Instead, he found Megan, and together they decided to stop building and start waiting for me to die. They saw a frail, confused 72-year-old man. They saw a resource to be liquidated. They have no idea. The poor old man act is over. The charade is done. Tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., Jordan and Megan are finally going to meet their father. They are going to meet Malachi Hayes, and they are going to learn in front of God, the law, and the IRS what happens when you try to steal from the man who built the bank. I was discharged from the hospital at 8 a.m. against medical advice. The young doctor looked at me with deep pity as I signed the forms with my good hand, my left arm bound tight against my chest in a dark blue sling. He probably thought I was a terrified old man fleeing a violent home, rushing off to liquidate my life savings to pay a monster. He was right about the monster. He just had the wrong address. Cynthia's driver, a silent man in a dark suit, was waiting for me at the curb. He didn't speak, just held the door of the black Mercedes S-Class. The ride to Century City was quiet. The windows were tinted so dark the bright Los Angeles morning seemed muted gray and distant. Cynthia Pham's offices were on the 34th floor. They were not offices. They were a statement of power. The walls were glass. The floors were polished Italian marble. The air smelled like money and absolute unforgiving competence. The conference room was the size of my old house in Atlanta. At its center was a single 20-foot slab of polished black mahogany, a table so dark and reflective it looked like a frozen lake. I took my seat at the head of that vast, empty table. Cynthia had placed a single pitcher of ice water, one glass, and one thin file folder in front of me. I sat there, a small 72-year-old man in a rumpled suit, my arm in a sling, looking frail, vulnerable, and completely out of my depth. I was a sparrow in an eagle's nest. It was the perfect stage. At 10 a.m. sharp, the heavy glass doors hissed open. Jordan and Megan entered. Megan was transformed. The terrified, hysterical woman from the emergency room was gone. She was wearing a sharp, cream-colored business suit, her hair pulled back in a severe professional bun. She looked confident, energized, triumphant. She was smiling a bright, cold, victorious smile. She had done it. She had faced down the old man, navigated the loan shark, and was about to walk away with everything. She looked at me at the end of that long, intimidating table, and her smile widened, a predator indulging its prey. Jordan was a different story. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes hollow and darting. He wouldn't look at me. He just shuffled in behind his wife, his gaze fixed on the floor. He was a defeated man, a ghost being dragged in her wake. Megan sat down confidently, placing her expensive designer handbag firmly on the mahogany. "Dad," she said, her voice dripping with the fake, syrupy concern she had perfected. "Are you feeling all right? Your shoulder? Is it hurting terribly?" "It hurts," I said, my voice a weak rasp. I didn't have to fake the exhaustion. Let's just get this over with, Megan. Please." The glass doors hissed open again. Vinny entered. He was just as immaculate as he had been in the hospital. He wore a dark gray Italian suit, perfectly tailored, and a silver tie. He was flanked by another man, this one older, shorter, with a worn leather briefcase, his lawyer. Vinny nodded politely to me, a small reptilian smile. "Mr. Hayes, I'm glad to see you're looking, well, you're here." He took a seat on the opposite side of the table, placing his manicured hands flat on the polished wood. His lawyer sat beside him and immediately opened his briefcase. Megan's smugness faded just a fraction in Vinny's presence. Jordan looked like he might actually be sick. The air in the room became charged. The polite professionalism of a high-powered law office was now warring with the barely concealed violent threat that Vinny represented. The doors closed with a heavy final click. Cynthia Pham entered from a side door. She was the very picture of corporate power, a razor-sharp black suit, her hair in a severe bun that looked like it could cut glass. She didn't smile. She didn't greet anyone. She simply radiated an authority that immediately eclipsed everyone else in the room, including Vinny. She sat to my right, placing a single, identical thin file in front of her. She looked around the table, her gaze pausing for a moment longer than necessary on Megan and Vinny. "Good morning," she said. Her voice was not loud, but it filled the room. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I am Cynthia Pham, counsel for Malachi Hayes and the Hayes Trust." She opened the file. "We are here to resolve all outstanding financial matters as requested by my client." Megan shifted in her chair, impatient, practically vibrating with the anticipation of her payout. Cynthia turned her piercing gaze to Vinny. "Mr. Vinny, I don't believe we have a last name for you." Vinny's lawyer spoke for the first time, his voice like gravel. "That won't be necessary. We are here to discuss the outstanding personal loan made to Mr. Jordan Hayes." "Of course," Cynthia said. "The $200,000 loan currently in default. Let's start there." She looked at me. I nodded, playing my part. I looked small. I looked scared. Yes, let's pay him. I don't want any more trouble. I just want him gone." Cynthia looked back at Vinny. "Mr. Hayes has decided to resolve his son's indiscretion. He is prepared to pay the $200,000 in full. Today." I watched Megan's face. A slow, triumphant grin spread across her lips. She looked at Jordan, her eyes shining with pure victory. She'd done it. She had faced down the old man, faced down the loan shark, and won. Vinny simply nodded, satisfied. "A wise decision, Mr. Hayes. We appreciate your promptness." His lawyer slid a single piece of paper across the table. "The wire transfer details." Cynthia didn't even glance at it. She pushed it back with one finger. "We won't be needing that. We will be paying by certified check." Megan could barely contain herself. "Great, perfect," she chirped. "So, Cynthia, while you're cutting that check, we also need to discuss the other documents." "The other documents?" Cynthia asked, raising one perfectly plucked eyebrow. "Yes," Megan said, all business now. She was in charge. "The amnesty agreement. The one where Dad agrees not to press those ridiculous assault charges. And she took a deep, satisfied breath. "The deed transfer for the Ladera Heights house, as he promised." Jordan finally spoke. His voice was shaky, but bolstered by his wife's absolute confidence. "Yes, Dad, you promised. You said we could have the house." I looked at Cynthia. I gave her the smallest, almost imperceptible nod. "Now." Cynthia held Megan's gaze. "Ah, yes, the house. I'm glad you brought that up." She looked down at her file. "Mr. Vinny, we will get to your check in a moment. But first we must address the issue of the payment source for this $200,000 debt." Vinny frowned. "I don't care where the money comes from as long as it's green." "Oh, I think you will," Cynthia said, a very small, very dangerous smile touching her lips. "You see, Mr. Hayes will be paying you the $200,000 from the proceeds of the sale of the Ladera Heights house." Cynthia Pham looked at Vinny, then at Megan, her expression perfectly neutral. "Mr. Vinny, we will get to your check in a moment. But first, we must address the issue of the payment source for this $200,000 debt. You see, Mr. Hayes will be paying you the $200,000 from the proceeds of the sale of the Ladera Heights house."